This is Paulo Freire, who is the Brazilian Marxist socialist. And this is a great article where it talks about how when Klaus wrote his Fourth Industrial Revolution, he was really just repackaging Marxism, socialism, liberation theology from people like Paulo Freire. And again, we need to understand that Fabian socialism is classical Marxism reformed. Classical Marxism failed in certain key areas. It was never able to get the proletariat to rise up. It was never able to establish and create a world revolution with those workers. So that was a key thing that Marxists and socialists after this period of early Marxism figured out. And so you had certain Marxist socialists who were very pro-Bolshevik, very pro-Marx. They weren't anti-Marx. They were just saying that this strategy isn't working. We got to figure out a better way to do this. So they decided to align themselves with monopoly capital, big industrialists, Henry Ford, people like that, who was influenced by and did get into Fabian socialism. In fact, they were so influential and had such a wide range that they even attracted Chesterton. Did you know Chesterton was involved in the Fabian socialists? Now, I don't think that Chesterton was fully on board with all of the plans, because Chesterton seems to have been consistently a critic of eugenics. And most of the Fabian socialists were pro-eugenics, right? The Beatrice and Sidney Webb, people like that, they were into dysgenics. They were into depopulation policies. And so when you read some of those Catholic writers like Hilaire Belloc and Chesterton, even though they were interested in and were, I think in the case of Chesterton, in the Fabian Socialist Society, they thought that this was some sort of, solution to, big capital and big corporations or whatever. But that's only part of the picture, because the thesis that I keep trying to explain and push and help people understand is that socialism is not a real opposition to capitalism. It's a dialectical control opposition that very wealthy people are smart enough and cunning enough to figure out is a key element of control. David Rockefeller, for example, figured this out. He studied under Austrian economics people like von Hayek. He writes theses under von Hayek. But then he also goes to study under the premier Fabian socialist, Harold Lasky, and he masters and understands both Austrian economic theory and Fabian socialist Keynesian economic theory. So David Rockefeller understands it from the vantage point of how it's control mechanisms and not ideas and theory that run things. And so he can say in his 1979 New York Times editorials that socialism and Maoism is great to control China. It doesn't make him a classical Marxist. It makes him a Keynesian Fabian socialist that wants to utilize whatever out of these systems. And that's why John Coleman's book is so great, because the blurb on the back says the enemy is not Moscow. The enemy is actually in Washington, because he correctly understands, just like the Johann Ratu book, that the world adopted after World War II, not capitalism, not Marxism, but Fabian socialism. That is, socialism combined with corporatism. It's not fascism, although you might think it is. It's a type of socialism that is combined with culture critique or cultural degradation that fascism doesn't have and didn't have. Classical Marxism didn't really care about that. It was focused on the workers. But with Fabian socialism, you have the idea of let's unite with super wealthy people and let them fund it, and we will take over through the institutions what they call penetration and permeation, and will destroy and degrade the culture in a way that the people become subservient to the corporate banker superstate. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And it's not fundamentally different than what Moses Hess and people like that talk about. It's not fundamentally that different from Bolshevism, except things like Bolshevism were their strategy. Although the Fabian socialists loved and supported and wrote letters to Krupskaya and Lenin and all that, they were all for that. They thought that this heavy-handed approach is not going to work. It needs to be the slow, gradual, slow kill approach. And they were correct, because that has what has worked. That is why the whole world has adopted this liberalism that we're in. It's not primarily like if you listen to a Marxist or a socialist, it's capital. It's, Wall Street, right? It's not capital or Wall Street or Moscow. It is what we're talking about. It is these globalist institutions that have been set up, and that's not different from or antithetical to what Moses Hess talks about. It's the same. That's what I'm trying to tell you. World revolution, world socialism, and world capitalism are all part of the same strategy. They're identical. So it's not Marxist socialists versus the free market libertarians. Marx taught free market. He says at the end of history, the state goes away and we're all libertarian. Marx is a libertarian. It's the end of the Christian state. It's the end of the monarchy and the end of the church. That's the real battle. And all of these people that are so important and key thinkers and figures, they can either be monopoly capitalists like David Rockefeller, or Fabian socialists or socialist liberation theologians like Paulo Freire. And what do we find? Oh, they actually all conglomerate at entities like the World Economic Forum, set up by the CIA, influenced by and run by people who are Marxist socialist capitalists like Klaus Schwab. So everybody is all tricked by the labels and the titles, but they're all part of the same thing. Don't worry about the labels. Are you a Marxist socialist, or are you a World Economic Forum capitalist? They're working for the same entity. It's the same.